Just going to give a few people a little bit more time to get on and get ready to go, and then I'm just going to go ahead and dive on in. I know Anthony's getting on here as well, so he's going to be in the live chat throughout the whole talk, and feel free to ask questions. Feel free to put anything you want in the chat. Should pull up on my phone, and I can answer any questions that anybody has. We're going to give it just a little bit more time. I see we've got about 9 people in, so give it just a few more minutes. All right, I think that's probably long enough. So yeah, Anthony just said if you have any questions, just post them below and we'll try and get them in the Q&A at the end. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I don't wanna waste anybody's time and make sure that everybody gets as much information as possible throughout this entire thing. I'm happy to have the opportunity to get on and talk to, all of you. I know the players, Anthony mentioned that the players have training right now, so I know a lot of the players won't be able to be on, but I know we have some parents, so I'm excited to be able to talk college soccer. Talking football in general is one of my most favorite things to do, so to get an opportunity to inform people, especially kids that are going to be the next ones coming through the system that I get to recruit and I get to work with on a day-to-day basis, I'm very, very excited to do so. So he's got a little bit of a run sheet for me, and I'm going to walk through a few different parts just to kind of get an introduction to myself. And then from there, we'll kind of answer some questions. Like he said, if you have a question, put it into the live chat, and I will do my best to answer those questions within reason. First things first, my name is Chase Robertson. I am a college soccer coach. Most recently, I was at the University of Tulsa for the last 18 months. I have now taken another job. I will be moving to Arkansas, working at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway. Both University of Tulsa and University of Central Arkansas are Division I college soccer programs. They are not playing in the same conference or anything like that, but they are both Division I. So they're both within this realm of college soccer that is seen as the pinnacle, Division I. I was lucky enough to coach at 2 other Division II college soccer programs. One also in Arkansas, Wichita Baptist University. It's a bit smaller, private university in a smaller town. And then I also coached at my alma mater for 2 years, Midwestern State University, which is in a bit, I don't want to say a smaller city, but it's a bit bigger than Arkadelphia, Arkansas, where there's 10,000 people, but it's not quite a metroplex like Tulsa, where you have all these surrounding areas. So that's my college coaching experience. I've done a little bit with club soccer. I worked with FC Dallas, West Texas, while I was in West Texas coaching at Midwestern State. I did a little bit with TSC, so some of you parents may have seen me out at the recent ECNL RL tryouts. I was there helping out for the last couple of weeks, and then I also had a brief time during the 2020 season. I was working with the Colorado Springs Switchbacks in the USL Championship, which is the second tier of professional soccer in this country. So I spent the entirety of the pandemic there. It was definitely different than college soccer, but there's a lot of similarities. So that's my kind of background. I know Anthony had some questions he wanted me to answer in particular, so I'm just going to roll through. If you have any questions about anything that I'm saying, feel free to ask away. So, all right, first one that he had asked was, what characteristics do you look for in a student athlete? And I think the biggest thing that we look for as college coaches is a kid who's going to fit into not only our ideas of football program organization, but our ideas of what student athletes are. Different universities have different qualities that they look for in particular. When I was at Midwestern State, we looked for kids that, maybe didn't have the same opportunities that players who are going to the University of Tulsa had. We were competing with those schools for recruitment, but we were also serving a different type of player and a different type of kid. So we did a lot with that. And then with the University of Tulsa, we have a different type of kid. Midwestern State is a public state school, and the University of Tulsa is a private university. So the cost is extremely different. You have to then look at players who not only fit the characteristics that you have for players, but also who can do what it takes to be in the university and be a student there. The University of Tulsa is a very strong academic school. I've had players who in the last 18 months that I was there have perfect 4.0s in very difficult classes. And on the flip side, a school like Midwestern State, which is a good regional state school, the classes are different in that they may be a bit bigger, they may have a few more students in certain classes, but the requirement, the intensity of learning is not quite the same. And that's just the brutal honesty. If you look at a school and you look at their graduation rates, you look at their placement rates for different post-graduation, post-secondary institutions, kids going on to med school, kids going on to law school, kids going on to different things, it's a bit higher at the University of Tulsa versus a state regional school with different quality of teacher, different quality of institution, that kind of stuff. And that's not to knock on Midwestern State. I have 2 degrees from there, and I'm very, happy to have been a student athlete, and I think I did learn a lot. There's just different types of universities, and I think that is a thing that gets overlooked when you look at student athletes going into your university. Is not only are you going to be a good athlete, are you going to be a good student there. And I'm not going to go and say, oh yeah, your test scores were not the greatest, your GPA was not the greatest, so I really want to put you on this amount of money, and you have to have this GPA and this GPA and that to stay in this school and this to be here and this to be academic. It's really difficult at a certain point for a kid as a student. So there has to be an understanding of who kids are as students as well as athletes. And I think the athletic part, that's for each coach individually to be able to describe. For an example, just using again the 2 levels, Division II college soccer is a very good level. I played Division I schools while I was playing Division II. I lost to one school. Marshall beat us 1-0 at one point when I was in West Virginia. I beat SMU. I beat Tulsa. I beat Radford, different Division I schools on the field, but those student athletes are a little bit different. The SMUs are bigger athletes. They're the kids that are, unfortunately, this is the way college soccer is. They're the kids that are 6 feet tall. They're the kids that are, extremely fast, extremely strong. And I think that plays into a lot of what you want to look for in a school and what I look for in a student athlete. If I'm recruiting for Midwestern State, yes, I want strong, athletic, big, tall soccer players who can go and do a job, but I also need the crafty, technical players who are going to be able to put the ball on the ground and play. Whereas the University of Tulsa, Kentucky, UNC Chapel Hill, those big-time Division I schools, they have different qualities that they need. They compete in conferences and they compete in regions where players are bigger, stronger, faster. And so you have to look at those characteristics as well. And I think coaches as a whole do a good job of trying to match that. And as a student athlete, as a player, as a parent, that's something to look into, is what type of football is being played at this school. If your son is 5'8", a crafty, technical, very smart soccer player, and he plays as a 9 with his club team or with his high school team, a striker, going and playing in the Big Ten is not going to be the easiest thing in the world, because they're going to have 6'4" center backs that are just going to be extremely fast, extremely strong, and from all over the world. So you have to look at the football type in order to know what characteristics are needed and what we look at as to college coaches for players. The next question he had asked, what's most important for me to do as a 9th and a 10th grader? And I asked earlier, he said that most of the players and parents that would be watching would be 07s, so that'd be going into 10th grade. There may be a few 08s that are going into 9th grade. I think the biggest thing and the most important thing for you to do now is to develop not only your soccer IQ. You should develop your soccer IQ, but you also need to make strides physically. You need to make strides on how you're developing yourself as an athlete, because college soccer is very athletic. You have to be, like I just said, you have to be strong, you have to be fast, you have to be able to make decisions under pressure. And I see that players, especially here in the US, where there's been a change in the dynamic. When I was playing we have a saying that my coach used to say: certain players play the piano and certain players carry the piano. A lot of the American kids carried the piano. We were the hard workers. We were the ones that put the ball on the ground, and we're just going to run for days, and we're going to be able to be fast and strong and run for longer and play harder and do all that stuff. And I think it's changing with the dynamic of soccer in the US. The way soccer is developing, players now, especially here, younger players are becoming more technical, are becoming more football oriented, are becoming, players with higher soccer and football IQs. And that's great. But that alone is not going to get you to the next level, because even beyond college soccer is professional soccer, which most kids want to reach. And I think if you're going to continue to grow and continue to get better and continue to be a player who moves throughout levels, you have to work on that physical side of your game. And that's not going out and running miles and miles and miles. Don't go join your cross-country team tomorrow because coach said you have to be physical. There's different ways to increase your physical presence. You could do stabilization, you could work on injury prevention, you could work on strengthening certain parts of your body. Maybe it's going to the weight room and not doing, the old school bench press and squats. Maybe it's doing something that is significant to you as a soccer player and an athlete. And I think that's something that 9th graders and 10th graders going in that 14 to 16-year-old, 17-year-old range really need to start taking more advantage of. Your recovery, your nutrition, sleep, all of those things play a vital role when you get to college soccer. And if you can start to look at that now, you're going to have a better opportunity come, 11th, 12th, going into freshman of college year, where you're going to have, more opportunities to play and be successful, because that's ultimately what we want, is for you to be successful. Another question, do you look at high school soccer for recruiting? What's the benefit of club versus high school? If you only play high school soccer, that is perfectly fine, and I'm not knocking high school soccer. When I was in high school, we did not have this club high school differentiation where, the academy has now taken the best players and doesn't allow them to play high school soccer. They're moving to different cities to play for these MLS clubs. When I was there, we had all of those guys still there. So high school soccer was very good. But now I think with this stretching of how many players are available at one time, high school soccer has taken a bit of a dip. It's still good football being played in certain areas, but you're at the mercy of what's available in your town. And if you live in a town of, 2,000 people, well, you may only have a certain amount of soccer players in that school. If you live in a town of, I grew up in a place with 20,000 people, and we were lucky to be on the outskirts of Dallas, and we had good soccer players that were there, as well as a good coach who all he did was soccer. And I think that's something you have to look at as well, is your high school soccer really making you a better player? If you can firmly say that what you were doing in high school, the training sessions, the coaching on the sidelines, the in-game opportunities, is it really making you better? Then yeah, it's perfectly fine. I'll go watch. I'm not going to go watch just schools that I know that are here. I'm not going to go watch a Bishop Kelly beat Muskogee or McAllister or somebody way out there 6-0. You scoring 3 goals against a team that doesn't have the same quality of players doesn't benefit me. I need to see you play competition, and that's where club soccer comes in. It kind of levels things back out across the board. Whereas, your club team can have kids from multiple cities all coming together and having the opportunity to play with each other. It more resembles what we see in college soccer than a high school soccer team does. College soccer is players from all over the country as well as all over the world coming together to play. And so that high school opportunities are not quite what you're going to get with club soccer. And so while we don't necessarily give as much attention to club soccer, we still want to make sure that we know what's going on, or high school soccer, sorry. We still want to make sure we know what's going on with high school soccer versus club. But club soccer is where you're going to see more of your attention. And I think the other part of that is, and like I said with coaching, club soccer, you have coaches who are hired specifically for that job. They're not, they may have other things that they do throughout the day, but a lot of club coaches now are full-time coaches. That's what they do, is their job is to coach that club and coach multiple teams. So having the opportunity to see those kids who are getting higher quality training, who are under the tutelage of professional coaches, people who are dedicating themselves to that coaching, that's just going to be something that college coaches are going to take more value and more stock in, because it like I said, it closely resembles what we do and what we play. Next question was about ID camps for 9th and 10th graders. And we just had an ID camp at TU. I was helping out there. I have an ID camp coming up in the end of July at Central Arkansas, and I think the best players that I saw at the TU ID camp were 9th and 10th graders. And I think that's something that for the higher levels, the Division 1s, the top level Division 2s, we start identifying players at 9th and 10th grade. We don't wait until their senior year and then try and get the best players for us. I identify players 2 years in advance so that I can continue to watch them as they go. And getting in front of us at an ID camp is a good way to not only allow the coaching staff to see you, to know who you are, to learn your name, to know what type of player you are, but it's also a good way for the player at 9th and 10th grade to understand what that college soccer program is about. Most schools do a really good job within their ID camps of structuring it just the same way they would a training session. So it's the same ideas, the same activities you're going to do when you're a part of that university's team. And if at 9th and 10th grade, you're seamlessly flowing into those sessions, it feels good, it feels like something you want, then maybe that's something you continue to pursue and you look at. It's also a great way to knock schools and teams off your list. If you're in 9th and 10th grade and you start thinking about college soccer and your list is 20 schools long, now I'm not saying go to 20 ID camps because that's a lot of money. But if you can go to 2 ID camps a summer for 2 years, that's 4 off of your list of 20. You do more research, more things about that. Maybe you go to a winter ID camp and you go to 2 more and you can knock off 6. Well, you're knocking back early these schools that sound really good but may not be what you want. And obviously there's change as a person grows. So if you're 9th and 10th grade and you come in and you don't really like it, but at 11th grade you're like, man, I remember being at Tulsa's ID camp and I really liked the session that they were doing. Go back. No, nothing says you only have to go to an ID camp once. You can go as many times as you want. And I think that's great for coaches to be able to see. The second part of that is, I think you have to be able to say, I'm going in with this to learn. I'm not going in with this to say, coach, here I am, I want a scholarship right now. I'm going in to learn about what it takes to be a player at that university. I'm going in to learn what the next level of soccer looks like, what the next level of dedication to my sport would look like, and take those things from that ID camp that you see and put them into play in your club atmosphere, your high school atmosphere, anything like that. That's what ID camps at that age are for. Identification of what schools you like, what programs you feel comfortable being around and participating in. And then, if things happen, things change, you can always, go back to whatever it may be and figure out what's right for you. I like this question that he came up with. It happened just last week, and while it's not a big deal, it does raise questions for college coaches. And my new boss said it very poignantly the other day. The question is, should parents be the one to make first contact? Well, for a 9th and 10th grader, we cannot talk to you until after June 15th of your junior year. So we can identify, but we can't actively recruit you. After that, we can talk to you at an ID camp. We can do things like that. You can email something that says, hey, this is my schedule. I can't respond with anything other than, thanks, I can't respond to you. Please come to this. But I can go and watch a game and I can do those things. Parents, I know the best of intentions are always there. That's across the board. You love your kids. You want what's best for them. As a college coach, when you're in that transitionary phase of life for these kids, like my new boss says, the parent's not playing for me, the kid is. And while it is your baby and you want to make sure they're taken care of and they're doing everything right, there's also a little bit of, at 18 years old, 17 years old, you're not always going to be there to have the hard conversations. I'm going to have them with the player. And so making the first contact parents making the first contact establishes the wrong type of relationship. I think being available and being willing to talk and speak through the process is great, but the player should be the one to reach out, because they are the one that I am going to have to see day in and day out. They're the one I'm going to have to be able to communicate with. They're the one that's going to have to deal with me on the days that I'm harsh and I'm loud and I'm obnoxious, because those days happen. So if you can get the player to begin the process of contacting coaches and reaching out early, when it comes to your freshman year and the season's not going the way you want and you go into a coach's office, it's not this intimidating, I don't know how to speak to him. It's, you've had a relationship with this person for 2 years, whether it be through email contact, text, phone calls, whatever your recruiting process is. It's going in and having an adult conversation. And I think that's something that establishing early will really be beneficial in the long run, is having the kids make the contact and establish that relationship so that they grow. How do I find the right college program for me? So research on the team is probably the easiest thing to do. Every college team across every level, junior college Division III, junior college Division II, junior college Division I, NAI Division I, NAI Division II, NCAA Division III, NCAA Division II, NCAA Division I. We all have websites with all of our information, all of our stats, everything on there. Every player's name, bios, how they've played. Most of the time, we do a good job of, and this is something that we're starting to really realize as coaches, myself being a younger coach, I'm pushing for it more, is the social media aspect of being able to understand what a team is about and what a team is like. So research all of your options. Go on the website and look through the players, look through the staff, learn about the coach, learn about the team, understand what type of players they look for, where they're playing, where they're from. That's another big thing, especially with schools that do a really good job regionally. In our senior year, how can players reach out to colleges in order to get that attention we need to have the opportunity to be recognized by college? So that's a great question, Tyler. If you're in your senior year, the best way to get in contact with a coach is through email. I think Yeah, it can get bogged down. We do get a ton of emails daily. When the season's rolling and things are going, we get thousands of emails a week, a month. So email, and make it a specific email. Put your name, put your graduation year, your club team, and then throughout the body of the email, make sure that you're explaining who you are. Now, don't go into great depth about your life. Just make sure that we understand what type of person you are, and give us a brief synopsis of where you're playing and when you're playing, and allow us to come and watch you. And other than that, you have the opportunity at showcases to play in front of us. And I think that comes down to coaches, and it comes down to clubs and what they want to do. The more you attend showcases, you'll go and see that college coaches line the fields. Just this weekend, I've got to drive to Dallas for the MLS Next playoffs, and there's going to be hundreds of college coaches there with opportunities for players to be seen. And that's not just the MLS Next level. ECNL playoffs are in San Diego this weekend, and there's going to be hundreds of college coaches there for that. I also have to go to the ECNL Nationals in St. Louis in July. That's another opportunity for kids. And it's not just these major tournaments. There's showcases all the time, whether that be in the summer, fall, or spring. There's a ton of showcases, and those are great opportunities for players to get in and get recognized by coaches. I think giving your email, following up consistently, not sending the same email, just repeating it over and over again, but saying, Coach, it was great to speak with you last time. Here's what I'm doing now. And just consistently keeping conversations going. Most of the time, a coach like myself, I'll just hop on my phone and I will shoot a text. Hey, man, it was great to talk to you the other day. How's season going? And that's the way that we communicate now. That's the way that we're being able to establish relationships with players, is making sure that we communicate across all platforms. But email is probably the best way. It's a great question. I'm going to move on from the right college program. That one I think is pretty easy. This one's a big one because I know I spoke to several people about this just a couple weeks ago. Do I need to do extra training outside of my team sessions? What if I'm the best player on my team? I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're only training twice a week for an hour and a half. If you're only training twice a week for an hour and a half, you're not where you can be. You're wasting your own potential. College soccer, we train every day. It may not be a team training every day because we have to have an NCAA day off, but we train every single day. Whether that be, players are in the recovery, players are in, they're doing their own individual fitness, they're going to the gym, they're working on all kinds of stuff. If you're only used to doing 2 sessions and 1 game a weekend through your entire club soccer career, and then when you get to college and you go through that first preseason of doing doubles every single day for 2 weeks, you're going to find it really difficult. Your fitness is not going to be where it needs to be. And I think double sessions, training on your own, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. There's a lot of people out on social media now, a lot of players, a lot of training ideas, things like that to do on your own. And it could be as far as getting a ball and, using a wall. Go find your local elementary school right down the street. They usually have a square, what's the game I'm looking for? 4-square court right there with walls around it. Get a ball and just practice driving a ball at a wall. You can do that for 30 minutes and you'll be amazed at how your technique just continues to get better. And then your touch, when the ball ricochets back off the wall, is going to go skyrocket. It's going to go through the roof. And you're going to have these opportunities to get better through those trainings. The team session is great because it gets you in a team environment, but the individual work, the time you put in outside of your team training, is what makes you a better player. Because that's dedication, that's desire, that's passion. If you don't have the passion to do this, college soccer is not for you. Because college, it's a lifestyle. Myself, I'm a coach. Very rarely do I get to go kick a ball, but I still go run. I ran 3 miles today in the heat because I know at training I need to bring energy. And if we're training at 3 p.m. and it's hot and I'm not physically where I need to be because I'm not doing my extra training outside of that, then I'm not going to be capable of bringing the energy I need to bring. And it goes the same for players. You know, if you're going to give yourself the best opportunity, you have to do a lot. And that doesn't mean spend hours and hours on end. It's just 30 minutes. If you have a brother or a sister, go out into the driveway and play 1v1. You know, work on skill moves, work on, you know, different techniques, work on ideas. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a field next to you, go grab a ball and work on your finishing by yourself. You know, you don't have to have cones, you don't have to have extra bodies. You just need one ball and one person, you, and you can get a lot done, I promise. Big question. This is very important for everybody because I just made a mention about it. What does the schedule of a college soccer player look like on a daily basis? Yes, it does. It does help to send college coaches your highlight reel, but I want to make sure this is something that we deal with a lot. Your highlight reel should be maximum 5 minutes. A lot of people send 12-minute videos on Huddle of everything they've done for a year. I may be able to get through 3 minutes before I have to move on to something else. And I think a lot of players bog down their highlight reels with different things. Send the best stuff you have. If it's a goal, if it's a dribble, if it's a shot, if it's something, send 3 minutes of the best stuff you have. And if it's good enough, and if it's something that really piques our interest, we will then move on and say, okay, send us a full game. And then I will sit down and watch a full 90 minutes. But if you don't have, you know, let's say you have a 12-minute highlight reel, if I can only get through 3 minutes and it's a lot of stuff that's just repetitive, you know, it's just a touch, it's just moving in space, it's just something that, you know, is very easily done, I'm not going to move forward with it because I've got 5 others I have to watch, or games I have to move on to, and ideas I have to continue to go through and make sure there are concise for players on the field. It's a lot of stuff we have to do. So I would say 5 minutes max. Put all of your best stuff at the front. Everything good, put it right at the front. First 3 minutes should be your best ideas, best things you've done in the field. If you have other things that you want to do, if the 3 minutes, you know, you feel like that's not enough, maximum cap it with 5, with whatever else you can feel like. Big thing, and I'm not kidding, put good music in it. If the music is not great and I have to listen to, you know, music I don't like, it bothers me. And I'm not joking, I'm dead serious. I know I'm smiling, but I'm dead serious. Good music, because it grabs my attention and makes me want to continue to watch. And then send that. If you want to add to it as things happen and you want to send a new 3 minutes in a month, send a new 3 minutes. But most of the time when a college coach gets a highlight reel from a player, if it's good and we like it, we'll contact to say, hey, let's get, you know, a full game. I want to see how you move in space. I want to sit down and watch. I want to make sure I have a clear idea. And then the other thing, the best highlight reel is just to invite them to your games. You know, if you're at a point where the coach that you really want to communicate with can't come see you, send them your highlight reel. But if there's coaches that are right around the corner, send them your game schedule. I love going and watching random games. And if I can see a kid in person versus a video online, I'm always going to want to see a kid in person versus a video. So that's a great question. I answer that one so often to different groups all the time. So very good. But back to the schedule. So the daily schedule is difficult. And I call it a lifestyle because that's what it is. You are a student athlete, and that starts from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep. There's very little downtime, very little playtime, very little things to kind of do. So I'll give you an example, and I'll go from TU because I was just there, and that way I can kind of break it down. So TU, our training times in the fall and in the spring were 8:30 a.m. So class didn't begin until after 11. We made it 8:30 to 10:30 was training. Prior to 8:30, we would do film or we would do a weight room. So 7 a.m., it may be film. You know, the guys are all waking up at 6:30. They're getting breakfast. They're getting ready. They come to the film room. We watch film on whatever we need to do for the day or for the week. Could be an opponent scout, could be anything like that. Then we go out to train from 8:30 to 10. Then most of our guys have class from 11 to 3. You know, it may be a 50-minute here, and then you get an hour break, and then another 50. It's one of those kind of however you schedule it. So usually your 11 to 3 was your class time. And then 3 o'clock until you go to bed is your time. But I will say a lot of that time is spent on recovery, and a lot of that time is spent doing homework, tutor visits, meeting with advisors, making sure you're staying on top of classes. So a lot of this college mindset is, you know, go experience all these things and do all this, and, you know, it's an opportunity for you to become, you know, a new person. You know, you see these stories of college kids partying all the time and doing that. It's not what it is for a college athlete. A college athlete doesn't have time. You know, I myself was an athlete. You're waking up at 7 a.m. You're going, my training session was at 3, so I had class from 8 a.m. till noon. And then I would have the weight room at 1:30, and then training at 3. Training would get done at 5, and then study hall would begin at 7. Study hall would end at 9, and then I would go home and finish whatever studying I had to do for the day. And that was every single day, right? So it is a lifestyle. It's something you have to put your heart and soul into, and if you do it, there's extreme benefits. You know, winning games and being a part of a successful program is great, but you also get work ethic. You get great friends that you have on the team, especially guys that suffer with you. Some of my best friends are players that I played with. You also build connections in your student's life as well. You know, you get people see this dedication that you're putting in, and they gravitate towards you, and they want to be a part of that. So that happens as well. Game day is a little bit different, as well as travel days. So for the Division I, schedules and different games, all that stuff, it varies drastically. And our conference, our out-of-conference play for the University of Central Arkansas, our first 2 games on the first weekend we're available to play are in Washington State and Oregon. So we will travel from Arkansas all the way up to Seattle to play UW, and then we will go down to Portland and we will play the University of Portland 2 days later. Then we will fly back, and all this is happening while this is like the first week of classes. Boys, I mean, there's no syllabus week. They get straight into it. So they're managing all of this all the while traveling. Game days, you know, you may have a little bit more time on your hands because you're not training and doing all those things at certain points. Games are usually later in the evening, so you have a bit more downtime, but you're also doing your preparation, which is another thing. So daily schedule, it is a lot. It's very rewarding. I tell my college coaches, I'm very good friends with them all the time, I cannot thank them, and I cannot show them enough appreciation for what they taught me when it comes to working hard, when it comes to being a good man and working, you know, for what you want. And that comes from your student athlete life and your lifestyle. So just a couple more questions I believe I have here, and then I'll make sure we have enough time for anybody that has anything else. How would I show a college coach that I am interested in their program? Email. First thing is email. You send an email telling us you're interested, that you'd like to start a conversation and continue talking. Email. That's the first thing I'm going to read. That's the first thing I do when I wake up, is I make sure I have emails done, and then from there we'll continue conversations with, you know, whether that be via email, via text, via phone calls, whatever it needs to be. Like I said though, 9th and 10th graders, you technically cannot contact us just yet, but we will get to you as we see. So Coach Anthony has a question. What as a parent can I do right now to know if my kid is good enough for college soccer? That's a great question, and it's really hard to answer. Very hard to answer, because as a 15-year-old kid, as a 16-year-old kid, you see all these pros, you know, guys that are coming through these systems and that are 15, 16, 17 years old. They are the exception. They are not the rule. Your 15-year-old kid, it's very difficult to know if they're good enough right now because there's so much change physically, mentally, soccer-wise, that can happen in 2 years. That can happen over 3 years. So I would say it's not the question of knowing if your son is good enough for college soccer. I think does my kid want to be in college soccer? If they want to be in college soccer, as a parent, you can give them the opportunity, the tools to continue to get better, right? What better is and what level they're going to compete at, who knows? That's for college coaches and the players and everybody to decide on their own as they go through. But just the fact of being a college soccer player and knowing you can, push them to wake up early and make sure they're taking care of their body, give them, instead of, and I trust me, I did it too. This is not knocking on anybody. I did it. And when you're driving home, late, you just had soccer practice, it's 8 p.m. and you don't want to make dinner, don't have the thought come into your head, I'm just going to stop at McDonald's. It's not that bad. McDonald's is okay after a workout, but it's the routine and it's the habit that creates from having that process. Over time, you're just going to continue to do it. And me, it happened with my life. I drink Dr. Pepper constantly because that's what my family drank and that's what we did as kids. And it's been really hard for me as a footballer and as a person to deal with that constant influx of sugar into my body. Somehow I made it through, but I drink Dr. Pepper way too much, and that's a routine. So I would say encourage the right eating. Make sure, and it's hard with 15 and 16-year-olds. My sister is 15 going on 16. She's an 07. I know. She's very sassy. They're just a pain right now, but encourage sleep. They got to get good sleep. They have to make sure they're doing the recovery part. They also need to be watching the game. That's something not enough kids do. The opportunities to watch the game now, as opposed to, and Coach Anthony can say the same thing, as opposed to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there weren't any. There were games. I remember the first game that I watched was the 2002 World Cup, and I had to be up at 4 a.m. to watch it in Japan on my TV in Texas, and I'm watching it on a TV with bunny ears, and you're trying to make sure that the picture's right. But now, every Saturday, you can wake up and watch every Premier League game that's on. MLS just signed a deal with Apple TV to stream every MLS game. And I know the MLS quality is not great, whatever, but it's still the highest level in this country. You can watch the French League. You can watch international games. You can watch everything you can imagine. Watch the game. Have, instead of letting them go play video games and do that stuff, maybe, sit down and watch a game with them and learn and say, hey, you see what this guy's doing? Like, I've seen college guys do this. The other thing that you can do right now, especially you guys that are here in Tulsa, and this is not promotion or anything like that, games at TU cost $5. And I'm going to be blatantly honest because, one, I coach there, so I like it a lot. But the way TU plays, they are the best soccer playing team in the country. If you want to go and watch soccer and you want to learn about what college soccer is, go to TU's games. Sit there and watch. Sit there and understand. Talk to the players after the game because they're just right there. A lot of these kids that are here playing college soccer, they grew up in the same town. I mean, we had 5 kids from Tulsa on our TU team last year. We just signed 3 more this coming fall. So there's 8 Tulsa kids. Only 2 were a WSA. All the rest are TSC. They're all kids that came through the same program as all of you guys. Those kids you can go and watch and you can learn a ton from them. A ton. It's a great question. Hard to answer, but a great question. And then I'm going to kind of this is the last one for me, and then I'll let you guys ask questions because I know I'm rambling on just a little bit. What is the parents' role in recruiting? How can we help? And how do we help without doing everything? That is a beautiful question. Parents, and it's different because every kid is different. You know, my mom and dad did nothing. They didn't help me write emails. They didn't. The most any of them did, my mom drove me to my first, actually my dad drove me to my first recruiting visit, and then he went off and hung out and did whatever he felt like doing and let me kind of go through it as a junior. And then my mom drove me to my second, and then my dad drove me when I transferred to another university. And that's the most they did because they wanted me, and they knew I knew what I wanted and how I wanted to do it. And so they let me kind of spearhead it. And I think being a facilitator of that kind of stuff is the best way you could go about it. Don't go and talk to coaches and be like, hey, don't sell your kids. Let them sell themselves. Let them do it with their play. Let them do it with their personality. Let them do it with their character. And just make sure that any questions they may have, you're there to answer. If you're there to answer them and then you allow them to experience it on their own, they're going to be better for it when they get to college. And I don't take yourselves completely out of it like my parents did, but don't be so involved that the coach feels like we're recruiting the parent and not the player. Like my new boss says, the parents don't play for us, the player does. So make sure that that's the person you're in contact with, and that's the ones that you're working with. So that's all the questions that kind of Coach Anthony wanted me to roll through, and like he said in the comments, question and answer. Carrie, no problem. I'm glad I was here to help. I wanted to make sure that my knowledge is spread in a way that it helps as many people as possible. And I know that going through this process with your sons is always new when you hit this 9th, 10th grade, 15, 16 years old, and you want them to experience. So I'm glad that I was able to help. Anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask. No question is off the table. I can answer pretty much anything about college soccer. And Coach Anthony, if there's questions that you saw that you felt like I should probably answer, feel free to put those in there as well, and I'll answer whatever we need to. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit for a few minutes. See if there's anything else here. No problem. No problem. Perfect. Perfect. Let me see if there's anything. I will, so I'm going to go just one more question that I think is very important because I did it today and it was on my mind. And Coach Anthony put it in here. What can I do right now to prepare myself physically and mentally for the rigors of college soccer? Don't kill your kids with fitness. Don't kill them. Make sure that they're gradually stepping it up and gradually increasing intensity of training sessions, intensity of stuff. Don't think that if you're going to play college soccer, you have to go crazy in the weight room and go crazy with fitness and do all these sprints and do all these things. Figure out what's necessary for your body and how you can make strides physically and mentally, and then continue to push yourself that way. That may be slow runs, that may be something, just time on the ball. That kind of stuff is so much more beneficial. And I think a lot of kids, when they get to college, realize it's not just all out 100% all the time. So that was another question I saw in here. I wanted to make sure that parents knew. Glad I could help. Say, Anthony, we'll give it another minute, see if anybody else that's on has a question, and then go ahead and wrap it all up. All right. We're about 50 in. All right, sounds good. Coach Anthony gave me the goods. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the people that came in and wanted to listen and learn something about college soccer. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. It's a different medium, just sitting and looking at myself talk, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, hopefully you guys can. How important is social media behavior? Great question. I'm going to answer this one because I like it. That's one of the first things I look at as a coach. If you send me your name, I will look up your social media. I will look up your Twitter. I will look up your Instagram. I will look up everything. And if you are a person that is bad character on Instagram, I won't even talk to you anymore. I won't tell you why I won't talk to you. We as college coaches want good character kids in our programs because they are a reflection of us. And I can't sit here and say I'm a good person and I do these things if my kids are off acting like fools. And so social media presence and your ability to monitor yourself and make sure that you're making the right choices, especially in this day and age, it's paramount. I can't stress it enough. I have had players that I've recruited, that I've stopped recruiting because of their social media. I've had players that have been a part of my team get suspended because of their social media. I've had players that had severe repercussions because of things they posted on social media and ultimately have to be released from a team. So this day and age, I know it's everything. Trust me, I'm on Instagram all the time. I use it to connect with people. I use it to connect with all kinds of stuff. You have to make sure that you're doing the right stuff on there as well. That goes straight into character. If you can be a good person on there, you can be a good person in your life. Everything's great, and you're the kind of kid that we want. Not necessarily. I don't think social media is crazy important. I think it's just another way for us to be able to see players and be able to understand who you are. Because, like I just said, it's more about the character of the person than it is the player. Kids can come in to our programs, whatever program we're a part of, and the coach's job is to make them better. Right, as a footballer, and help them grow as a man and grow into a good adult, and those types of things are always a part of it. But we can make them good soccer players. It's always a struggle to make them good, character people. That's the only thing that we social media is for. So don't feel like you have to have, an Instagram, a Twitter, all this stuff to post all your videos and all of your stuff on. That's not necessary. It's more for kids that do have it, kids that are a part of it, things that are happening. That stuff is more there. You don't have to be, post highlights to social media. You don't have to be on, post your training sessions to TikTok. It's not necessary, but it's just another way for me to evaluate a person as a person, not necessarily for a soccer playing ability or anything like that. It's a good question. And also judge the school off of their social media. If you can find mine and you can see what I do, then it gets you another opportunity to see, and you can also look at the teams as well. So parents, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to save this post and put it up there. I appreciate the time. Thanks, Coach Anthony, for putting it together and allowing me to talk. Hope all of you have a good night. Thanks.